Good day, everyone. So I thought I'd do a little review of these battery checker, the ISDT BC-8S. So I've been using these for quite a little while here. What I like about them, obviously, is they can monitor 8 channels. Many of the battery checkers can only do 6. This one has a lot of advanced functions, which I'll go through in a second. Now, to do the testing, I'm using this battery pack that I just put together quickly. It's 8 cells in series, and I got a balanced lead connected to it. And let's plug it in and see what I can show you. Okay, so right now you can see it gives you an approximate battery charge, which is 52%, and it's telling me the average battery voltage are 3.84 and the lowest is 3.82 for a total voltage of 30.7. So it even tells you the 8S. If you go through the menus by pressing the bottom button, you have a little bar chart here. So this little dot in the middle is 3 volts. So as you discharge the cells, you'll see them gradually decreasing. What's interesting about this is as you apply a load, these little bars, you can tell a little bit, they'll split in half, and you'll be able to see what's the lowest value or approximately the lowest it's been on with a load. Also that a little later. Here's a voltage of each group. We're back to the main menu. Now to go into the configuration, you hit the top button here and hold it. So you see the menu. You can check different type of battery cells, so, lithium polymer, which is same thing as lithium ion, but for 4.2 volts. High voltage lithium ion, 4.345 if you're using those. Lithium ferrite, 3.65. Lithium ion, 5.1. So I don't use this because it won't let me get to the full 4.2 volts of a lithium ion. So you can set the low voltage alarm. So you can set it up to 3.8, which is kind of 3.9. That's kind of high, and as low as 2.5. So I put it at 3. Over voltage protection. This is the lowest value, 4.22. I'd like it to be lower than that, but 4.22 is still safe. Voltage unbalanced, so you can actually have an alarm to tell you when the cells are unbalanced by a minimum of 0.1. So I set that to off for my purposes. Location searching, I think it has to do with drones. It'll ring to be able to find your drones if you've lost it. And 1 minute reminder, I have no idea what that is. And if you wanted it to not ring, you can put it to on. That way there's no sound when I press the button and no alarm. Put it back to off. You can rotate this to be upside down if you're installed it upside down. And this is the contrast. Can't really tell too much on this video. And obviously you can change the language. Alright, so here I'll demonstrate how this works here. What I've done is I've got this connected to a DC to DC converter power supply. So it's telling me that this pack here is plugged into the input, and I got my battery packs here that are connected to the output. So we're going to just apply a load by turning this on. So right now I have it set, I don't know if you can see that, to 12.6 volts, 1 amp. If I go ahead and turn it on, it's applying 1 amp load, and you'll see the voltages start going down. I'll increase the amperage. We're pulling 2 amps, 3 amps, 4 amps. As you can see, they're dropping pretty quickly. So if I take the load back off, see how they go back up, but you also see the minimum voltage seen. So that's pretty handy, because if sometimes you'll have a balanced pack, but one cell could be weaker on load, so a higher internal resistance, or just weaker for some reason. So you could see this one, the bottom one, seems to have discharged the most, was shown the lowest voltage. Let's try this again. I'll re-increase the amperage. Now you see it's ringing because the bottom cell, these couple of cells are now below. So we had some cells that went, well, most of the cells went below 3 volts, so they started ringing. You can see there. Now these cells are not very strong enough, but I was still pulling 7 or 8 amps out of it just to demonstrate. So you can see that all the cells actually went below 3 volts. So if I unplug it, plug it back in, and of course that's no longer remembered. So let's do this again. So now you can see not all of them went below 3 volts. And you heard the alarm. So technically, if any cell goes below 3, the alarm should ring. And that way it gives you an indication that you stop, disconnect the batteries, because they're discharged. Again, as I explained before, these are some fairly weak batteries, and I was pulling quite a bit of amperage out of it. But this is perfectly useful to show you how this battery checker works. So I have encountered a couple of issues that I have with this battery checker, and in order to demonstrate that, I'll have to do a stop motion. So I'll transfer the video to another method of recording, because I'm not going to hold this for several hours. Okay, so here you see I have the battery pack connected to the battery checker with no load. So I'm going to go ahead and do a little time lapse of this to demonstrate one of the negatives of this battery checker. Okay, so now it's time to test one of the most important features of this battery checker, which is to sound an alarm if any of the cells go below 3 volts or whatever voltage you decide to set. So as you can see here right now, after my previous test, the battery checker discharged the first 2 groups, well, the first 2 cells, but the other ones are a lot higher. So technically, if I were to leave this go, the number 2 cell would probably be the first one to reach 3 volts and sound the alarm. In order to accelerate the discharge of the number 2 cell, I'm going to use this light bulb. So it's a 12 volt bulb, but if I connect it to the number 2 cell, which is up here, it'll quickly drop the voltage. So let's do that right now. So as you can see, that worked very well. So the voltage quickly dropped to 3 volts. And if I can show this closer, you can see that the bar is now split in half, where the one part is clearly indicating that it went below 3 volts. That's where the little dot is. So technically, if any one of these groups, any one from 1 to 8, goes below 3 volts, the alarm should sound. And that's, to me, was the most important aspect of this battery checker. Now, however, there is one major problem with this battery checker, which I will demonstrate now. I'll apply the same load to the first cell, and we'll see what happens. As you can see, the voltage is now below 3 volts. We're seeing 2.94, 2.92, now 2.9, and the alarm still hasn't rung. Now you can see the bar is completely gone. We're at 2.44 volts. Okay, so I'm going to stop that there, close to 1 volt. And the light bulb's not even glowing at all, so no alarm. So that's, to me, is not at all acceptable. This could be a major issue. If your first cell goes below 3 volts, it will not sound an alarm. Let's do the second one again. And now we don't have an alarm on that one either. So it seems that if the first group of cell goes quite low, even if the second cell now goes below, the alarm won't sound. Let's try the third group of cells, see what happens. So that worked. So the third cell, once it went below 3 volts, the alarm rang. Let's try the second cell again. So no alarm, and yet we're way below 3 volts. So earlier, when we applied a load to the second cell, the alarm did ring, but only when cell 1 was above 3 volts. Now that it's below 3 volts, it will no longer ring. So again, this is quite unacceptable, and it actually has caused issues in my applications. So I have a, if you look at my previous videos, I converted my Commander. I got an electric side-by-side, which used to use lead acid batteries, and I converted it to 18650 cells. I purchased these testers precisely to monitor my cells in order to give me a warning if any of the cell groups goes below 3 volts, and therefore I would obviously immediately stop using it and charge it up. So I was using these cell checkers. Now normally I unplug them when I'm not using the side-by-side, but occasionally I would leave it overnight, and I think even once or twice I left it on for a week at a time. Now these are, of course, the packs on my Commander are quite a bit bigger, so they took a long time to the first 2 groups cells to discharge, but eventually they did. And what happened is that when I was using it, of course the first 2 groups of cells discharged first, because now my pack wasn't balanced because of the battery checker. And I think it was the first groups of cell that went below 3 volts and no alarm rang. And then the second group of cell went below 3 volts. And again, the alarm didn't ring because now both first and second groups of cells were below 3 volts. I think they went as low as 1 volt in my application. So that's extremely bad. If any of the other groups of cells, and I have seen it before, where group 4 or 5 was reached 3 volts first, so the alarm rang. So I always thought that I was safe using these battery checkers. But now that I know that cell 1 or cell 2, if cell 1 is the lowest voltage cell, and if it reaches 3 volts, the alarm will not ring. So unfortunately, I would not suggest that anybody rely on this battery checker. It's quite unfortunate. These are extremely handy. I really like the bar. So when I use my pack, I can see which group of cell was below 3 volts, because it's quite surprising that you can see with the bar chart right now, the highest cell is the number 8, 3.78. But when you would use this pack in a normal application, all the cells would have a load applied to it. And if by chance 8 is actually a weak cell, the voltage could drop quite quickly compared to the other ones. And you would see that like this with this split bar. And then you could obviously identify which groups of cell is weaker than the others. So yeah, So this is a nice, could have been a really good battery checker. I really liked it. I've actually bought several of these for different applications, and now that I know that the checker itself will discharge the first 2 groups of cells and will not ring an alarm on cell number 1 or number 2 if they're weak. Unfortunately, I cannot recommend this battery checker. So unless the manufacturer fixes these major issues, I mean, really the issue of it discharging the first two groups of cells, I sort of understand that. I've seen most testers do that to run the electronics. You can't run the electronics on a high voltage. So if it were to end, because it's depending on how many cells you have 2, 3. The minimum you would need to get this battery checker to work is 2. So logically, it does draw its power from cell 1 or 2. So ideally is you don't leave it on your pack for extended periods of times. Unplug it when you're not using it. But in use, it can't be relied upon to ring alarm when the cells go below 3 volts. So I hope you enjoyed this video, and I hope it's helpful for you. And I thank you for watching.